Okay, thanks, Paul. Well, here in the studio is the former UK Finance Secretary, Lord Miners, and the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Michael Fallon. These initiatives that have just been leaking out over the last few days, why is it taking you 18 months to get around to them?
Well, they haven't just been leaking out. Things like credit easing were announced by the Chancellor at the last party conference.
The public spending stuff today...
On infrastructure?
Yes, on roads and railways and the like.
It's precisely because we've stuck to Plan A that we're able now to accelerate some infrastructure spending, and we're able, I hope, tomorrow to give more help. Why is it taking you 18
months to get around to it, was my question.
Because we've now discovered that some departments are underspending. We're able sensibly to bring that spending forward and to move it forward into infrastructure to get the economy growing again. That's what everybody wants.
Well, you must be chuffed, aren't you?
Well, one shouldn't say no to things which will be good for stimulating the economy, but the economy, as a consequence of this government's policy, has been pushed back towards recession, and recession is causing the deficit to increase, and the Conservatives misunderstand it. They have it around the wrong way. They are arguing that the deficit is damaging growth, when in fact, at the moment, it's the absence of growth which is inflating the deficit.
No, just hang on a moment. Paul Miners should hang his head in shame. He was one of the Treasury ministers who left us this deficit that we're now having to tackle. Now, the OECD today said, yes, of course, growth is slower because of the problems in the Eurozone that Paul has identified. Of course, growth there is much slower. But they also said that the fiscal plan we've got has bolstered credibility and needs to continue despite the worsening outlook. The Plan A is there, we're sticking to the plan, but at the same time we're doing what we can to accelerate growth and to help families through this.
Sorry, go on.
Michael, the fact is the economy in the 12 months from the final quarter of 2009 grew at 2.6%. Since then it hasn't grown at all. Over the last 12 months, only Portugal, Greece and Cyprus have achieved lower rates of growth than the UK. The problems started well before the euro crisis, and it's the policies of your government which are creating this absence of growth.
This is rewriting history from somebody who served in the Treasury at the time. Just a minute. Those countries yes, may well have behaved differently. We had a worse deficit than these countries, which you yourself left us. The Eurozone crisis didn't just start this year. If I can remind you, the crisis started in Greece well back at the beginning of 2010. In fact, under the last Labour government. This has been a very, very slow build-up in the Eurozone. Are you
saying that's their fault too?
No, but there has been building up for a year and a half. You can't suddenly say the Eurozone is going wrong now on our watch. This has been building up for a couple of years now in the Eurozone, and we've had to inherit the consequences of it. But you're going to hear tomorrow, we're going to try and accelerate growth, some spending on infrastructure, and I hope some help for motorists and rail commuters through it.
£5 billion or something on the infrastructure over the duration of this Parliament. Is that correct?
It's £5 billion that's going to bring in another £20 billion of private investment as well, through getting the pension funds involved for the first time in this country, getting them invested.
Have you got a guarantee from the pension funds from the Chinese and others?
Well, the point is to bring in the British pension funds. That's not been done before.
You've got a guarantee of that, have you?
We've signed an agreement with the pension funds today to get the money in there.
Guaranteed, is it?
Well, the £5 billion will lock in another $20 billion on top. Yes, there's an agreement to do this, and they work
guaranteed. It's a worthless piece of paper,
well, you
Michael.
never even tried it.
You know that. It's not a guarantee in terms of fixed commitments, because there aren't projects, there aren't pricing of projects, toll agreements, payment agreements. There is an agreement in principle to look favourably. There is no guarantee.
You don't think it's a good thing?
I think it is a good thing.
OK, supposing it is £5 billion over the rest of this Parliament.
No, 30 together. 5 in this Parliament, 5 in the next, plus 20 of private.
Fine. And roughly what proportion is that of government spending, or indeed of GDP?
Well, we're spending about £700 billion altogether.
Yes.
But it's an extra £5 billion. But the point about it is it accelerates...
Spread over many years.
Over 4 years. It accelerates infrastructure. It brings some of this
so it's
essential
about £1 billion
spending
a year, roughly, you hope.
An extra billion that's brought forward now that wouldn't have been spent
the government
otherwise.
cut capital expenditure by £50 billion earlier this year.
How many people are going to go out and spend money on extra mince pies or whatever it is because they've heard the A14 is going to be widened?
Well, if you use the A14 as a business, you certainly need it widened. If you want that road to Norwich jewelled, you'll be cheering at the news today. There are agreements not just for roads, but also for rail, and more importantly, to bring forward more school building.
Go on. Why are you shaking your head?
It's improving our infrastructure. Isn't that important?
Improving infrastructure is something which we agree about and which we've been arguing in favour of, Michael, now for over 12 months. As Jeremy said, it's taken you a long time to finally realise that you need to do something about it and reverse the massive cuts that you announced in the last budget. You reduced government capital expenditure by £50 billion. This £5 billion, which you're going to spend over the remainder of this Parliament, is less than the cuts that you've already introduced in the current year.
This is which are very similar to the cuts you've had to
margins.
No, come on.
And tomorrow we're going to get, Jeremy, we've had lots of good news leaked over the last 3 or 4 days. Tomorrow we're going to get the hard news about how grim the economic outlook is.
Let's be clear.
It sounds like you were relishing it.
Yeah. No, not at all.
You were
very much the case that in despair that this government is doing nothing about it.
You think we're going to have a recession?
Yes. I've no doubt about it. Indeed, major parts of the country are already in recession. It is the southeast which is buoyant. The remainder of the country has been in recession for at least 3 months and probably 6.
Well, look, you were already planning to cut capital expenditure. That was in Alistair Darling's budget. The fact is we're spending over 50% of GDP. Only the second time since the war have we done that 3 times in a row.
Michael, you're in charge now. You're in charge. You can't keep pointing back to the past.
But that's
you
why,
are in charge.
That's why we're having to bring spending under control. But it's only because it is under control we're now able to bring forward some good spending on the infrastructure and indeed to help motorists and rail consumers.
You can continue this outside. Thank you both very much. Thank you.